Yes, this was Sebastian's garden. The Latin names of the plants were printed on tags attached to them, but the print's fading out. Those ones there are the oldest plants on Earth, survivors from the age of the giant fern forest. Of course, in some of the semi-tropical climate, some of the rarest plants, such as the Venus flytrap. You know what that is, Doctor? The Venus flytrap?
An insectivorous plant?
Yes, it feeds on insects. It has to be kept under glass from early fall to late spring, and when it went under glass, my son Sebastian had to provide it with fruit flies flown in at great expense from a Florida laboratory that used the fruit flies for experiments in genetics. Well, I can't do that. I can't do that, Doctor. I can't. I just can't do it. It's not the expense, but the...
Nothing.
Yes. So goodbye, Venus flytrap. Like so much else. Woo! I don't know why, but I already feel like I can lean on your shoulder, Dr.
Sucrose. It's the Polish word that means sugar. Let's just make it easy and you can call me Dr. Sugar.
Well, now, Dr. Sugar, you've seen Sebastian's garden.
It's like a well-groomed jungle.
That's how he meant it to be. Nothing was accidental. Everything was planned and designed in Sebastian's life and his work.
What was your son's work, Mrs. Venable? Besides this garden?
As many times as I've had to answer that question, don't you think it still shocks me a little? To realize that Sebastian Venable, the poet, is still unknown outside of a small coterie of friends, including his mother.
Oh.
You see, strictly speaking, his life was his occupation.
I see.
No, you don't see yet, but before I'm through, you will. Sebastian was a poet. That's what I meant when I said his life was his work, because the work of a poet is the life of a poet, and vice versa. The life of a poet is the work of a poet. I mean, you can't separate them. I mean, well, for instance, a salesman's work is one thing and his life is another, or can be. The same thing's true of a doctor, a lawyer, a merchant, or a thief. But a poet's life is his work, and his work is his life, in a special sense because, I've already taught myself breathless and dizzy. Thank you.
Mrs. Venable, did your doctor okay this thing?
What thing?
You're meeting this girl that you think is responsible for your son's death.
I've waited months to face her, but I couldn't get to St. Mary's to face her. I've had her brought here to my house. I won't collapse. She'll collapse. I mean, her lies will collapse. Not my truth. Not the truth. Forward march, Dr. Sugar. We made it. Ha ha. I didn't know I was so weak on my pins. Well, sit down, Doctor. I'm not afraid of using every last ounce and inch of my little leftover strength in doing just what I'm doing. I'm devoting all that's left of my life, Doctor, to the defense of a dead poet's reputation. Sebastian had no public name as a poet. He didn't want one. He refused to have one. He dreaded, abhorred, false values that came from being publicly known, from fame, from personal exploitation. Oh, he'd say to me, Violet, Mother, you're going to outlive me.
What made him think that?
Poets are always clairvoyant, and he had rheumatic fever when he was 15, and it affected a heart valve, and he wouldn't stay off horses or out of water and so forth. Violet, Mother, you're going to outlive me longer than me, and then, when I'm gone, it will be yours, in your hands to do whatever you please with, meaning, of course, his future recognition. That did he want. He wanted it after his death, when it couldn't disturb him. Then he did want to offer his work to the world. All right, have I made my point, Doctor? Well, here's my son's work, Doctor. Here's his life going on.
Poem of summer.
Poem of summer. And the date of the summer. There are 25 of them. He wrote one poem a year, which he printed himself on an 18th century press at his atelier in the French Quarter. So no one could see it, but he could see it.
He wrote one poem a year?
One of each summer that we traveled together. The other 9 months of the year were really only preparation.
9 months?
The length of a pregnancy, yes.
The poem was hard to deliver?
Yes, even with me. Without me, impossible. Doctor, he wrote no poem last year.
He died last summer?
Without me, he died last summer. That was his last summer's poem. One long ago summer, now, why am I thinking of this? My son, Sebastian, said, "Mother, listen to this." He read me Herman Melville's description of the Encantadas, the Galapagos Islands. Quote, "Take 5 and 20 heaps of cinders dumped here, and then in an outside city lot. Imagine some of them magnified into mountains. In the vacant lot, the sea. And you'll have a fair idea of the general aspect of the Encantadas, the Enchanted Isles. Extinct volcanoes, looking much of the world at large might look. After a last conflagration," end quote. He read me the description and said that we had to go there. And so we did there that summer on a chartered boat, a 4-masted schooner, as long as possible to the sort of a boat that Melville must have sailed on. We saw the Encantadas, but on the Encantadas we saw something Melville hadn't written about. We saw the great sea turtles crawl up out of the sea for their annual egg laying. Once a year, the females of the sea turtles would crawl up to the equatorial sea onto the blazing sand beach of a volcanic island, and would dig a pit into the sand and deposit her eggs there. It's a long and dreadful thing, the depositing of the eggs in the sand pits. And when it's finished, the exhausted female turtles would crawl back to the sea half dead. She never sees her offspring, but we did. Sebastian knew exactly when the sea turtle's eggs would be hatched and would return in time for it.
You went back to the
terrible Encantadas, those heaps of extinct volcanoes, in time to witness the hatching of the sea turtles in their desperate flight to sea. The narrow beach, the color of caviar, was all in motion. The sky was in motion, too.
But the sky was in motion, too.
Full of flesh-eating birds and the noise of the birds, the horrible savage cries of the
carnivorous birds.
Over the narrow black beach of the Encantadas, as the just-hatched sea turtles scrambled out of the sand pits and started their race to the sea.
Race to the sea?
To escape the flesh-eating birds that made the sky almost as black as the beach. And the sand all alive. As the hatched sea turtles made their dash for the sea, while the birds hovered and swooped to attack them and hovered and swooped to attack. They were diving down on the hatched sea turtles, turning them over to expose their soft sides, tearing the undersides open, and rendering and eating their flesh. Sebastian guessed that possibly only 1/100% of their number would escape to the sea.
What was it about this spectacle at the beach that fascinated your son?
My son Sebastian was looking for... Let's just say he was interested in sea turtles.
You started to say your son was looking for something.
All right. I started to say that my son was looking for God. And I stopped myself because I was afraid that if I said he was looking for God, you'd say to yourself, "Oh, a pretentious young crackpot," which Sebastian was not. All poets look for God. All good poets do. And they have to look harder for him than priests do, since they have a book for guidance. And well-organized expeditions as priests have with their sculptures and churches. All right. Well, now I've said it. My son was looking for God. I mean, a clear image of him. He spent that whole blazing equatorial day in the crow's nest of the schooner, watching the thing on the beach of the Encantadas, till it was too dark to see it. Then he came back down the ringing. He said, well, now I've seen him. And he meant God.
I see.
For several days after that, he had a fever. He was delirious with it. I took over command of the ship, and we sailed north by east into cooler waters. Next, India, China, and the Himalayas. What? Oh, elixir. Oh, ha. Isn't it kind of a drugstore to keep me alive? Where was I?
In the Himalayas.
Oh, yes. That long ago summer, in the Himalayas, he almost entered a Buddhist monastery and had gone so far as to shave his head and eat just rice out of a wood bowl on a grass mat. He'd promised those sly Buddhist monks that he would give up the world and himself and all his worldly possessions to their mendicant order. Well, I cabled his father. For God's sake, notify the bank to freeze Sebastian's accounts. I got back to this cable from my late husband's lawyer. Mr. Venable, critically ill, stop, want you, stop, need you, stop, immediate return, advised most strongly, stop. Cable time of arrival.
Did you go back to your husband, Mrs. Venable?
I made the hardest decision of my life. I stayed with my son. I got him through that crisis too. In less than a month, he got up in that filthy grass mat and threw the rice bowl away. And put this into the Shepherd's Hotel in Cairo and the Ritz in Paris. And from then, we still lived in a world of light and shadow. But the shadow was almost as luminous as the light.
Don't you want to sit down now?
Yes, indeed, I do, before I fall down. Oh, God. Are your hind legs still on you?
My what? Hind legs? Yes.
Well, then you're not a donkey. You're certainly not a donkey because I've been talking the hind legs off a donkey. Several donkeys. But I had to make it clear to you that the world lost a great deal too when I lost my son last summer. You would have liked my son. He would have been charmed by you. My son, Sebastian, was not a family snob or a money snob, but he was a snob, all right? He was a snob about personal charming people. He insisted upon good looks and people around him. And he had a perfect little court of young and beautiful people around him always. Whether he was here in New Orleans or New York or on the Riviera or even in Paris or in Venice, he always had a little entourage of the beautiful and the young.
Your son was young, Mrs. Venable.
Both of us were young and stayed young, Doctor.
Can I see a photograph of your son, Mrs. Venable?
Yes, indeed you could, Doctor. I'm glad that you asked that one. I'm going to show you not only one photograph, but two. Here's my son Sebastian in a Renaissance page boy's costume and at a masked ball in Cannes. Here's my son Sebastian in the same costume at a masked ball in Venice. These two pictures were taken 20 years apart. Now, which is the older one, Doctor?
This photograph looks older.
The photograph looks older, but not the subject. It takes character to refuse to grow old. Doctor, successfully to refuse it. It calls for discipline, abstinence, one cocktail before dinner, not two, not four, not six. A single lean chop and lime juice on a salad at restaurants famed for rich dishes.
Mrs. Venable, Miss Holly's mother and brother are...
Hi, Auntie.
Violet, dear, we're here.
Wait upstairs in my upstairs living room for me. Get them upstairs. I don't want them at that window during the talk. Let's get away from the window.
Mrs. Venable, did your son have what kind of a personal, private life did your son have?
That's a question I wanted you to ask me.
Why?
I haven't heard the girl's story, except indirectly in a watered-down version, being too ill to go hear it directly. But I gathered enough to know that it's a hideous attack on my son's moral character, which, being dead, he can't defend himself from. I have to be the defender. Now, sit down. Listen to me. Before you hear whatever you're going to hear from the girl when she sits here, my son, Sebastian, was chased. Not C-H-A-S-E-D. Oh, he was chased in the way of spelling it, too. We had to be very fleet-footed, I can tell you, with his looks and his charm to keep ahead of pursuers. Every kind of pursuer. I mean, he was C-H-A-S-T-E. Chase.
I understood what you meant, Mrs. Venable.
And you believe me, don't you?
Yes, but
But what?
Chastity, at what age was your son last summer?
40, maybe. We don't really count birthdays.
He lived a celibate life?
As strictly as he vowed to. This sounds like vanity, Doctor. But really, I was actually the only one in his life that satisfied the demands he made of other people. Time after time, my son would let people go, dismiss them, because of their attitude toward him was...
Not as pure as...
My son Sebastian demanded. We were a famous couple. People didn't speak of Sebastian and his mother or Miss Venable and her son. They said, Sebastian and Violet. Violet and Sebastian are staying at the Lido. They're at the Ritz in Madrid. Sebastian and Violet. Violet and Sebastian have taken a house in Maritz for the season. In every appearance, every time we appeared, attention was centered on us. Everyone else eclipsed. Vanity. Oh, no. Doctor, you can't call it that.
I didn't call it that.
It was a folie de grandeur. It was grandeur.
I see.
An attitude toward life that hardly known in the world since the Great Renaissance. Princes crowded out of their palaces and gardens by successful shopkeepers.
I see.
Most people's lives, what are they but trails of debris? Each day, more debris. More debris, long trails of debris with nothing to clean it all up but finally, death. My son, Sebastian, and I constructed our days. Each day we would carve out each days of our lives like a piece of sculpture. Yes, we left behind us a trail of days like a gallery of sculpture. But last summer, I can't forgive him for it. Not even now that he's paid for it with his life. He let in this vandal, this...
The girl that...
that you're going to meet here this afternoon, yes. He admitted this vandal with her tongue for a hatchet she'd go on about smashing our legend. The memory of...
Mrs. Venable, what do you think is her reason?
Lunatics don't have a reason.
I mean, what do you think is her motive?
What a question. We put the bread in her mouth and the clothes on her back. People that like you for that, or even forgive you for it, are hen's teeth, Doctor. The role of the benefactor is worse than thankless. It's the role of a victim, Doctor. A sacrificial victim. Yes, they want your blood, Doctor. They want your blood on the altar steps of their outrageous egos.
Oh, you mean she resented the...
Loathed. They can't shut her up at St. Mary's.
I thought she'd been there for months.
I mean, keep her still there. She babbles. They couldn't shut her up in Cabeza de Lebeau or at the clinic in Paris. She babbled, smashing my son's reputation. On the Berengaria bringing her back to the States, she broke out of the States room and babbled. Even at the airport when she was flown down here, she babbled a bit of her story before they could whisk her into an ambulance to St. Mary's. This is a ridicule, Doctor. A catch-all, carry-all bag for an elderly lady which I turned into last summer. Will you open it for me? My hands are stiff and fish out some cigarettes and a cigarette holder.
Yeah, yes, Mrs. Venable. Oh, I see. A little late now. I don't have matches.
I think there's a table lighter on the table.
Oh, yes, there is. Oh, my lord, what a torch!
So shines a good deed in a naughty world. Dr. Sugar.
Mrs. Venable,
Yes?
in your letter last week, you made some reference to a fund of some kind, an endowment fund of...
I wrote you that my lawyer and bankers and certified public accountants were setting up the Sebastian Venable Memorial Foundation to subsidize the work of young people like you that are pushing on the frontiers of art and science, but have a financial problem. You have a financial problem, don't you, Doctor?
Yes, we do have that problem. My work is such a new and radical thing that people in charge of state funds are naturally a little scared of it and keep us on a small budget. So small that we need a separate ward for my patients. I need trained assistants. I'd like to marry a girl I can't even afford to marry. But there's also the problem of getting right patients, not just criminal psychopath that the state turns over to us for my operation, because it's, well, risky. I don't want to turn you against my work at Lionsview, but I have to be honest with you. There's a good deal of risk in my operation. Whenever you enter the brain with a foreign object,
Yes?
even a needle-thin knife,
Yes?
in a skilled surgeon's fingers,
Yes?
there's a good deal of risk involved in the operation.
You said that it pacifies them, it quiets them down, it suddenly makes them peaceful.
Yes, it does that. That much we already know, but,
What?
well, it will be 10 years if we can tell if the immediate benefits of the operation will be lasting or passing, or even if there still be. And this is what haunts me about it. Any possibility afterwards of reconstructing a totally sound person, it may be that the person will always be limited afterwards. Relieved of acute disturbances, but limited, Miss Venable.
Oh, but what a blessing to them, Doctor. To be just peaceful, to be suddenly peaceful. After all that horror, after those nightmares, just to be able to lift up their eyes and see a sky not as black with savage, devouring birds as the sky that we saw in the Encantadas, Doctor.
Mrs. Venable? I can't guarantee that a lobotomy would stop her babbling.
That may be, maybe not. But after the operation, who would believe her, Doctor?
My God. Mrs. Venable, suppose after meeting the girl and observing the girl and hearing this story she babbles, I still shouldn't feel that her condition's intractable enough to justify the risk of... Suppose I shouldn't feel the non-surgical treatment and such as an insulin shock and electric shock and...
She had all that at St. Mary's! Nothing else is left for her.
What if I disagree with you?
That's just part of a question. Finish the question, Doctor.
Would you still be interested in my work at Lionsview? I mean, would the Sebastian Venable Memorial Foundation still be interested in it?
Aren't we always more interested in a thing that concerns us personally, Doctor?
Mrs. Venable, you're such an innocent person that it doesn't occur to you. It obviously hasn't even occurred to you that anybody less innocent than you are could possibly interpret this offer of a subsidy as, well, as sort of a bribe.
Ha ha! Name it that. I don't care. There's just two things to remember. She's a destroyer. My son was a creator. Now, if my honesty shocks you, pick up your little black bag and the subsidy without the subsidy in it, and run away from this garden. Nobody's heard our conversation but you and I, Dr. Sugar.
Mrs. Venable?
What is it? What do you want, Miss Foxhill?
Miss Venable, Miss Holly is here.
Oh, my God. There she is, in the window. I told you I didn't want her to enter my house again. I told you to meet them at the door and let them around the side of the garden. And you didn't listen. I'm not ready to face her. I have to have cocktail first to fortify me. Take my chair inside, Doctor. Are you still here? I thought you wheeled me out the garden. I'm going back through in the garden in the other entrance. Doctor, sugar. You may stay in the garden if you wish, or to run out of the garden if you want. Or go in this way if you wish to do anything you wish to, but I'm going to have my 5 o'clock daiquiri frozen before I face her.
Sorry.
Sit down and Miss George. Tell me comes inside.
What did you take out of that box on the table?
Just a cigarette, sister.
Put it back in the box.
Too late, it's already lighted.
Give it here.
Oh, please let me smoke, sister.
Give it here.
Please, Sister Felicity.
Catherine, give it here. You know that you're not allowed to smoke at St. Mary's.
We're not at St. Mary's. This is an afternoon out.
You're still in my charge. I can't permit you to smoke because the last time you smoked, you dropped a lighted cigarette on your dress and started a fire.
Oh, I did not start a fire. I just burned a hole in my skirt because I was half unconscious under
Catherine,
medication.
give it here.
Don't be such a bully.
Disobedience has to be paid for later.
All right, I'll pay for
Give
it
me
later.
that cigarette or I'll make a report that'll put you right back on the violent road.
I'm not being
if you
violent,
don't.
sister.
Give me that cigarette. I'm holding my hand out for it.
All right, here, take it, take it.
You burned me with it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You deliberately burned me.
You said give it to you, and so I
stuck
gave
a
it to you.
lighted
I'm sick.
cigarette
I'm
in
sick
my
of being
hand.
Boston bullied.
Sit down.
There goes the Waring mixer. Aunt Violet's about to have her 5 o'clock frozen daiquiri. You could set a watch by it. We're in Sebastian's garden. My God, I could still cry.
Did you have any medication before you went out?
No, I didn't have any. Will you give me some, sister?
I can't. I wasn't told to. However, I think the doctor will give you something.
The young blonde man I bumped into?
Yes, the young doctor's a specialist from another hospital.
What hospital?
A word to the wise is sufficient.
I knew I was being watched. He's in the window, staring out at me.
Sit down and be still. Your family's coming.
Lion View, is it, doctor?
Sit down, dear.
Is it Lion View, doctor?
Be still.
When can I stop running down that steep white street in Cabeza del Loco?
Catherine, dear, sit down.
I loved him, sister. Why wouldn't he let me save him? I tried to hold onto his hand, but he struck me away and ran in the wrong direction, sister.
Catherine, dear, be still.
Bless you, sister.
Thank you.
The doctor's still at the window, but he's too blind to hide behind window curtains. He catches the light. He shines through them. We were going to Blondes. Blondes were next on the menu.
Be still now. Quiet, dear.
Cousin Sebastian said he was famished for blondes. He was fed up with the dark ones and was famished for blondes. All the travel brochures he picked up were advertisements of the blind northern countries. I think he'd already booked us to Copenhagen or Stockholm. Fed up with dark ones, famished for light ones. That's how he talked about people, as if they were items on a menu. That one's delicious looking. That one is appetizing. Or that one is not appetizing. I think because he was really nearly half-starved from living on pills and salads.
Stop it. Catherine, be still.
He liked me, and so I loved him. If he kept hold of my hand, I could have saved him. Sebastian suddenly said to me last summer, "Let's fly north, little bird. I want to walk under those radiant cold northern lights. I've never seen the aurora borealis." Somebody said once, or wrote once, we're all of us children in a vast kindergarten, trying to spell God's name with the wrong alphabet blocks.
Sister?
I think it's me they're calling. They call me sister, sister.
Catherine, dear Catherine! doesn't seem much fine, George.
Well, they send you to the beauty parlor whenever you're going to have a family visit. Other times you look just awful. You can't have a compact or a lipstick or anything made out of metal because they're afraid you'll swallow it.
Well, I think she looks splendid, don't you, George?
Can we talk about the men for a minute?
Yes, I'm sure it'll be all right. Sister?
Excuse me, Sister Felicity. This is my mother, Mrs. Holly, and my brother, George.
What do you do?
This is Sister Felicity.
We're so happy that Catherine's in St. Mary's. So very grateful for all that you're doing.
We do the best we can for her.
Yes, I'm sure you do. Yes, well, I wonder if you would mind if we had a little private chat with my Kathy?
I'm not supposed to go out of my sight.
It's just for a minute. You can sit in the hall of the garden, and we'll call you right back the minute the private round is over.
Jesus, what are you up to, huh? Sister, are you trying to ruin us?
George, will you be quiet? You're saying your sister.
How elegant George looks.
George inherited cousin Sebastian's wardrobe, but everything else is in probate. Did you know that everything else is in probate? Violet can keep it that way as long as she wants to.
Where is Aunt Violet?
George, come back over here. Aunt Violet's on her way down.
Yeah, Aunt Violet got an elevator now.
Yes, she has. She's had an elevator installed where the back stairs were. And sister, it's the cutest little thing that you ever did see. It's painted in Chinese lacquer, black and gold Chinese lacquer, with lovely bird pictures on it. But there's only room for 2 people at a time. George and I came down here on foot. I think she's having her frozen daiquiri now. She still has her frozen daiquiri promptly at 5 o'clock every afternoon in the world, in the warm weather. Sister, the horrible death of Sebastian has just about killed her. She's not slightly better, but it's a question of time. Dear, you know that. I'm sure you understand why we haven't been out to see you at St. Mary's. They said you were too disturbed, and a family visit might disturb you even more. But I want you to know that nobody, absolutely nobody in the city knows a thing about what you've been through. Have they, George? Not a thing. Not a soul even knows that you came back from Europe. When people inquire, when they question us about you, we just say that you stayed abroad to study something or the other. My sister, I want you to be very careful about what you say to your Aunt Violet about what happened to Sebastian and Teresa de Lobo.
What do you want me to say about what?
Just don't repeat the same fantastic story to her. For my sake and George's sake, for the sake of your mother and your brother, don't repeat that horrible story again. Not to Aunt Violet. Will you?
Then I am going to tell Aunt Violet what happened to her son in Cabeza de Lobo.
Honey, that's why you're here. She's insisting on hearing the story straight from you.
You're the only witness to it, Kathy.
No, there were others that ran.
Oh, sister, you just had a little sort of a nightmare about it. Now listen to me, will you, sister? Sebastian has bequeathed to you and Jordan his will.
To each of us, 50 grand each. Get it? After taxes.
Yes, but if they give me an injection, I won't have any choice but to tell exactly what happened that summer in Cabeza de Lobo. Don't you see? I won't have any choice but to tell the truth. It makes you tell the truth because it shuts something off that might make you able not to, and everything comes out, decent or not decent. You have no control, but always, always the truth.
Oh, Catherine, I don't know the full story, but surely you're not too sick in your head to understand that in your heart, that the story you're telling is just true.
Kathy, can't you just stop telling that story for your own sake, for yours, 50,000?
Because if Aunt V contests the will, and we'll know that she'll contest the will, it'll be in the courts forever. Will we?
It's in probate now. I'll never get out of probate until you drop that story. And we don't have the money to afford lawyers to contest it. So until you drop that story, we don't have the money to get a pot to cook greens in.
Catherine, don't laugh like that. It scares me, Catherine.
Kathy, the money's all tied up. If Aunt V decides to contest Sebastian's will that leave us with any of the money? Am I coming through to you?
Yes, little brother, you are.
You see, Mama, she's traced like a coyote. We don't get a single goddamn penny. Honest to God, we won't. So you got to drop that story about what happened to Sebastian and Cabeza de Lobo, even if it's what it couldn't be true. You gotta drop it. Sister, you can't tell such a crazy story to civilized people in a civilized upstate.
Why did you invent such a tale?
But Mother, I didn't invent it. I know it's a hideous story, but it's a true story of our time and the world we live in and what did truly happen to cousin Sebastian and Cabeza de Lobo.
Oh, then you are gonna tell it. Mama, she is gonna tell it. Right to Aunt V's face and lose 100,000. Kathy, you are a bitch.
George!
No, I mean a bitch. She ain't crazy. She ain't more crazy than I am. She's just just perverse. Yeah, always was. Perverse.
George, you come back right over here and apologize to your sister. This is no way for you to talk to your sister. You come back over here right now and tell your sweet little sister that you're sorry for what you said, that you spoke to her like that.
I'm sorry, Kathy. But you know we need that money. Mom and we. I got ambitions, and I'm young. I want things. I need them. So can you think about me? Us?
Miss Holly.
Somebody's calling for me. Catherine, George played very badly, but you know that it's true. We do have to get what Sebastian has left for in his will. Dearest, and you won't let us down? You promise you won't let us down?
Here comes Aunt V. Mama, Kathy. Here comes Aunt V.